Hey, what's going on guys, this is AndrewChicken and welcome back to another video. In this one, I'll be giving you the 5 most helpful tips that I've learned during my first 150 hours playing Deadlock. If you're brand new to the game and want to know the most important things to get better at, then stick around because this is the video for you. And if you're someone who's experienced at the game and has any other new player tips or things that I've missed, then please feel free to leave your advice in the comments section down below. But anyways, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on future Deadlock content, and let's get started. So, up first we have the most important tip of the video, especially if you're coming from hero shooters or other FPS games and aren't as familiar with MOBA mechanics. You should never neglect these minion waves because they are the key source of your souls. Souls are basically Deadlock's equivalent of gold or credits that you use to upgrade your character throughout the match. Not only are these souls used to buy items that make you stronger, but the souls will directly scale your character's health and damage as the match goes on. If you fail to farm enough souls, you will fall behind and eventually lose no matter what. So, how should you go about farming souls? Well, it's important to strike a balance between shooting the enemies and finishing off creeps. You only get souls from creeps if you or an ally in your lane lands the final hit on them, so you need to make sure you're finishing them off. This doesn't mean that you should empty your entire clip into each minion, rather, you can wait for your own minions to deal damage to them and then finish them off when they start glowing white like this. As long as you're paying attention to when minions are low and finishing them off, you can still spend plenty of time harassing the enemies with your attacks. Also, you need to pay close attention to these green and orange floating orbs that appear whenever a minion is killed. You see, minions don't give you all of their souls right away. You get part of the souls immediately after killing the minion, but then the rest of the souls float up into the air as one of these orbs. Both you and the enemies can shoot this orb to secure it, meaning that the enemies have the potential to steal your hard-earned souls. If you know an enemy is around, you should always shoot these green orbs whenever possible to make sure that they don't steal your souls, and you should also be trying to shoot any orange orbs that appear when the enemies kill your minions. Stealing souls can give you a huge leg up because it gives you bonus souls while preventing the enemies from building up as quickly. Now, if you don't want to give the enemies a chance to steal your souls, then you can always just last hit the minions with a melee attack. This will guarantee that you get the full amount of souls from the minion, but it's also riskier because you will potentially expose yourself to an enemy attack. If you're facing down an enemy who's ruthlessly good at stealing souls, or you just happen to be playing on ping, this is the most reliable way to secure souls from minions. Of course, killing enemies also gives you a big bounty of souls, so why not just focus on killing the enemies as much as possible, you might ask. Well, this is because, generally speaking, one wave of minions gives about the same amount of souls as a kill in the early game. It's much easier and more effective to reliably last hit minions and only go after player kills when someone is critically low. Also, if you engage too aggressively into enemy territory, then their minions and guardians will start shooting you, dealing a bunch of damage and ending up getting you killed. So, always remember, early game farming is all about striking the right balance between putting pressure on the enemies and last hitting minions. Before we move on to the next tip, let's talk about neutral camps. Jungle camps are another great way to get souls, but they shouldn't be your main focus unless you're playing a specific build that's designed around efficiently farming the jungle. You see, jungle camps are only efficient if you can kill them fast enough. This is because, relative to minion waves, they don't actually give out that many more souls, and they take longer to kill if you don't have good AoE abilities to take them out. Neutral camps also don't give you their souls right away, instead going into a bundle of unsecured souls. These will slowly give you souls over time, but if you die, then your bundle of unsecured souls will drop on the ground for anyone, including your enemies, to pick up. The more neutral camps you farm, the riskier it is for you to die because you might just deliver a bunch of souls to your enemies. Jungle camps are definitely still worth it to farm, but you have to be smart about it. If there aren't many creeps in the lane, it can be worth it to quickly take down a neutral camp if you have the damage to do so. It's also important to bear in mind that there are 3 tiers of jungle camps, each getting more difficult than the last. In the early game, you should only spend time destroying tier 1 camps or tier 2 camps with a big group of tier 1 minions. In the mid-game, tier 2 camps become worth it, and then tier 3 camps can be good shortly after that if you're playing a character like Seven who has excellent camp claiming potential. The second tip I have for new players is to learn about the counterplay items that the item shop has to offer. There are many effects in this game that can be overwhelming, like stuns and healing sources, but luckily, there are items that counter these effects. Let's run through a few of the most important options. First up, we have items that counter healing. The 2 most common items that counter healing are Healbane in the early game and Leech in the late game. Both of these items cause your spirit damage, or ability damage, to apply an anti-healing effect. This is a great way to stop enemies that have large amounts of lifesteal or other healing abilities. However, if weapon damage is more your speed, then you can buy toxic bullets to apply a bleeding effect on your weapon attacks that also reduces enemy healing. Second, we have crowd control reduction items. If you're frequently being stunned, silenced, or otherwise locked down, then your first thought should be to buy Debuff Reducer, an item that reduces the duration of all negative effects applied to you. This includes effects like Infernus's damage over time, by the way. And if that's not enough, you can buy Debuff Remover to completely remove all negative effects with the press of a button and passively gain even more debuff duration reduction. There's also Unstoppable, which is an expensive item that makes you immune to most forms of crowd control for 6 whole seconds. This is great to use right before using ultimate abilities so that the enemies don't counter you. If you're taking too much damage, then you should take a look at your damage recap and see whether you're taking more bullet or spirit damage. If one source of damage outweighs the other, then you can buy damage reduction against that type of damage by buying either bullet or spirit armor. This is a simple, passive way to gain a ton of survivability. You can also attach a stun or silence to any character by purchasing Knockdown or Curse. Both of these are active abilities that you can use to counter flying enemies and powerful channeled ultimates like Sevens. In general, you shouldn't be afraid to purchase active items that give a unique ability to your character. Many new players, including myself at first, neglect these items even though they can be ridiculously powerful. Let's go over a few of the best active items that are great to buy on most characters. Healing Right is one of the most common active abilities in the game that gives you a powerful healing over time effect in the early game. Most players tend to buy this ability if they're taking a lot of damage in the laning phase of the match. Warpstone and Fleetfoot are also two really good movement abilities that can help you chase down enemies or get out of a sticky situation. They're especially helpful on heroes that don't have a lot of mobility, like McGinnis or Bebop, but they can also be really impactful on heroes with a lot of mobility, like Viscus. Cold Front is also an insanely good damage tool for clearing out minions and bursting down enemies. It releases a frost AoE that slows enemies and does a good chunk of damage, and it has a relatively low cooldown. I've been enjoying this item a lot recently. These are some of the most common active items, but there are also plenty of excellent active items for specific builds, like Echo Shard on Bebop, Refresher on Dynamo, Phantom Strike on Viscus, or Heroic Aura on McGinnis. While it may be tempting to ignore these items, you should learn to use them because they provide immense value to your character. On the topic of builds, it's important to have a good build going into the match, because buying the right items can mean the difference between getting farmed and dominating the lobby. However, making a good build is a struggle as a new player because you don't know what all the items do yet, but luckily, Valve made it easy to steal builds from other players. If you go to the Hero Sandbox and open up the item store, you can press the Browse Builds button and then click on Public. Here, you can see some of the most popular and effective builds for whatever character you're playing. Of course, we can argue all day about how well optimized the builds are, but one thing is for certain. As a new player, picking a popular public build will make your gameplay experience so much better. It also pays to look through what each popular build uses to see what they have in common so you can learn what each item does and which items are good on your character. In general, playing with popular builds will help you get a better grasp on the item store so that eventually you can make your own builds that are tailored around your personal preferences. Also, it's important to understand how build archetypes work. You see, you can build most characters in one of two ways, around weapon damage for their gun, or around spirit damage for their abilities. There are only so many souls to go around during a match, so you generally can't build for both most of the time. Knowing whether a build is a gun build or a spirit build, and which abilities the build is trying to augment will go a long way towards understanding your character as a whole, and learning how to build them in the future. If a build doesn't outright say whether it's a spirit or a gun build, you can usually tell by looking at the distribution of orange versus purple items shown here. Finally, let's talk about another extremely important tip that a lot of players don't take full advantage of. Communication is extremely important in a game as complex as Deadlock, but most new players don't use their mics at all. If you want to get better at Deadlock, you need to start using voice chat and communicating with your team. I know that it can be hard because you might be shy, or you might want to avoid toxic people, but the truth is, it's absolutely worth it. In a MOBA like Deadlock, it's important to have someone who's willing to be the shot caller, coordinating the team around attacking certain objectives or defending certain lanes. Communication is, in many cases, the difference between a team grouping up and winning the game, or getting steamrolled. Even a basic plan is better than no plan, and a coordinated push from your team is much more effective than everyone doing their own thing. If no one in your lobby is stepping up and using comms, then you should be the person that steps up, calls plays, and leads the team. Of course, there will occasionally be people that are toxic. That's just the nature of competitive gaming as a whole. But the simple fact of the matter is that the vast majority of matches don't have toxic people in them. Out of the more than 150 matches I've played, I can count on one hand the amount of times that I've encountered extreme toxicity. And if someone is bothering you too much, just ignore them or mute them. If you're serious about getting better at Deadlock, learning how to communicate with your team is absolutely 100% necessary. Once you have a grasp of the fundamentals of Deadlock, communication should be one of the most important skills that you focus on to rank up. But anyways, those are my top 5 best new player tips for Deadlock. If this video helped you get better at Deadlock, then make sure to drop a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on future content from me. And if I missed anything or you have any other new player tips, please feel free to leave them in the comments section down below. Finally, if you want to support me directly, please consider joining the memberships program down below. You can gain access to a bunch of different perks and help keep me doing what I'm doing. All your support is greatly appreciated. But with all that being said, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.